Hello. Welcome to tonight's webinar, The Ultimate College Guide for First Years and Sophomores. My name is Andrea. I'm with Quad Education. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. It's wonderful to have you here. So before we get started, I do have a few housekeeping rules, so to speak. First and foremost, this webinar is recorded and you will receive a recording within a day or two. Additionally, we're looking at running this webinar for about 45 minutes, 15 of it are Q&A. So in the meantime, any sort of questions you have about this process or questions that are sort of in the back of your mind and you'd like answered, definitely put them in the chat. And if we haven't gotten to them already by the end of our webinar, we'll make sure to get it done then. So a little bit of a presentation agenda for you. So we'll be doing an introduction. Obviously, you see two wonderful panelists on screen. You'll get to know them a little bit more and what makes them the experts in this field. We'll be discussing understanding the college admission cycle, what colleges are looking for, boosting your college candidacy, navigating the college admissions process, preparing for financial aid, and that Q&A that we've mentioned. Now, introductions. Whether you're new here or this is, maybe your second or your third time joining us on our webinars, we just want to take a moment to speak to who we are and why Quad is Quad and sort of why we're so globally recognized for what we do. So like I said, Quad is a globally recognized college admissions consulting firm with the largest team of admissions counselors in the world. With a 98% success rate, our students are 11 times more likely to get accepted at their top choice colleges. We assist students anywhere from the 6th grade to undergraduate transfer candidates in applying to their dream schools. We are firm believers in starting the college application process as early as possible. For our middle schoolers and early high schoolers, we offer college candidacy and profile development. This process focuses on building each student's resume to highlight their strengths. We want the candidate to stand out, so we will work with your student to identify clubs and leadership positions, find extracurricular activities and volunteer opportunities, and assist in creating next year's class schedule. Our college candidacy program extends outside of the classroom in the regular school year. Since schools are looking at much more than academics these days, our counselors also help plan summer activities. This can include summer courses, internships, shadowing, research opportunities, and giving back to the community through encouraging students to create service projects. Once we've helped shape an outstanding candidate, we extend our support to shaping the perfect application. We're here to help with comprehensive application support from picking the right major to building a balanced list of schools, activity list creation, and obtaining letters of recommendation, as well as interview prep and applying to scholarships. Our admissions counselors are also essay writing experts who will brainstorm, outline, and edit until your supplemental essays and personal statements are perfect. These essays serve as a platform to showcase the best aspects of our students, drawing connections between their individual life journeys and the overarching themes of every school that they are applying to. Whether it's your main application or those extra essays for scholarships, we've got your back with unlimited edits. Overall, our goal is to build the perfect candidate and application. We utilize every tool in our skill set to ensure the products we create are the products that we create are with students in mind. If you're interested in learning more about us and our packages, we offer personalized free consultations via video, phone, or email, ensuring individualized support. Our admissions counselors are always and ready and willing to help you through the process, so you don't have to navigate it alone, no matter where you are in the application process. Which brings me to our wonderful panelists here who will be introducing themselves. I'll pass it over to you, Heinz.
Hey everyone, it's a pleasure to be able to meet everyone virtually. My name is Heinz Fernandez, and I am one of the Quad consultants. I also currently work at Florida Atlantic University as one of the assistant directors for transfer recruitment and admission. So it's a pleasure to be here, and I'm excited to be able to tell you a little bit more about the admissions process and how we can get things moving along.
All right, and I'll jump in. Hi, everyone. My name is Dominique. I am also an admissions counselor here at Quad. I've been here for a little over 2 years now. My background is in, I started out at Dartmouth College as an undergraduate. When I was at Dartmouth, I was a tour guide, working closely with the admissions office. And then after Dartmouth, I was able to work for a bit as an alumni interviewer for Dartmouth as well. I have experience working in the public education setting as a teacher and an advisor for high school students after my time at Dartmouth, where I advise students on similar things to what I advise students on through Quad. Those same things we just talked about, really getting help with making those choices regarding extracurriculars, planning for testing, course selection, things like that, and kind of bringing that all the way up through senior year, where then you go kind of put those pieces in and craft a really compelling narrative and application for colleges based on your experiences. So super excited to be here as well and talk about that whole timeline from start to finish. I can jump in with this first piece and just kind of introduce us to our topic today. And so first kind of big thing that I want to say to everybody here is it is so important to start early. It's really important as soon as, usually kind of ninth grade is seen as the universal time to really start thinking ahead and planning. But if you can even start to think about this in middle school, the better off you'll be. I say ninth grade because colleges will only ask for your high school transcripts, and they're usually only interested in the extracurriculars and experiences, formally at least, that you've had in high school. Of course, you can refer back to things that happened before then, but you're only going to be listing those activities and involvements that you've done formally in those 4 years. And so it really is important to kind of hit the ground running when you do hit ninth grade, knowing that all of that is going to be kind of official and formal. And so the more time you have to, try different things and figure out what you like and really kind of just be on a more targeted trajectory, the better off your story will be and the more compelling of a narrative you'll be able to write as to why you want to go to a certain college, study a certain topic, and how all of the experiences you've had throughout your 4 years have prepared you for that. And so this whole webinar, we are basically going to go through step by step how to kind of start at the beginning and then bring us through the application cycle itself. I will kick it over to you, Heinz.
Yeah, definitely. So there's a lot of importance in thinking about planning ahead when you're starting this entire process. So we have to first understand, what does college admissions look like and how do we navigate this? So it's first understanding that this entire process can be very confusing. It can be very competitive and complex. That's okay. You're not the only one thinking that. You're not the first and you won't be the last. So we have to first understand, what are exactly our different colleges and universities? What are they looking for? How do we plan accordingly for this? And our job here is to be able to help you kind of make yourself this very strong candidate in their eyes. So a lot of what we're going to be able to cover are the different key components of the college admissions process from start to finish, what you should be doing at each and every single stage, and how do we continue to make you look stronger than every other candidate out there.
Awesome. So we're going to talk a little bit about what colleges look for, and this is kind of a framework that you can use to plan backwards and really say, okay, well, this is what I need to have by the time I'm in 12th grade and I'm applying to schools. Let me make sure I'm planning ahead to achieve all of these things. And so the top two, and I think these are the kind of the most basic ones that everybody thinks of course, your academic performance. So this is your GPA, grade point average, basically a single number that kind of sums up the average grades that you earned throughout your high school experience. Different schools will do GPA a little bit differently. Some will weight it, some will not weight it based on the rigor of your coursework. Some schools will do a 4.0 scale. Some schools have a different kind of number that they rank everything out of. And so just so you all know, that is all standardized based on what is called the school profile. And so every college that you apply to will receive basically this document from your high school that says, here is exactly how students are graded here, and here is how we calculate GPA. Your school profile may say, we don't offer class rank, right? We don't rank our students in order of, 1 to whatever who had the best grades. A lot of schools don't rank. And so if you're asked for your class rank, you may not be able to report it, but you won't be penalized for that because your school profile will tell that school that you just simply don't have that. Same thing with GPA. The school profile will say, well, this GPA is out of blank and we weight X, Y, and Z courses differently because they're more rigorous, whatever it may be. And so you'll be kind of looked at in the context of the high school you went to, as opposed to, being compared necessarily to other people from other schools that may not have that same system for grading GPA, class rank, etc. Rigor of your coursework is another big one. I think that this kind of goes without saying, but do challenge yourself as much as possible by taking on upper level coursework, whether that be AP, IB, dual credit, honors, things like that. It is almost always better to get a slightly worse grade in a higher level kind of AP level class than it is to take a more basic class. That is not always the case. But it is just something to keep in mind. So if you are like, well, I don't know if I can get an A+ in AP bio, maybe I should just take regular bio. Well, can you get an A-? Can you get something that shows, hey, I challenged myself here? That will go really far in your application as opposed to being perfect in something that's easier and you didn't really take that challenge. Standardized test scores is another one. I'll try to just kind of go over this relatively quickly. We'll talk more about the whole process later on. SAT and ACT are the biggest exams that we think of, but also AP. If you do take AP classes, will have an exam associated with them. The SAT and the ACT are, for lack of a better term, kind of coming back in style right now. Over the last few years, especially with COVID, a lot of schools were moving away from really valuing and even asking for SAT and ACT scores. A lot of schools said, we are test optional. You can take these tests, but you don't have to. Many are kind of shifting back in the direction of saying, no, these are once again required and a significant portion of your application. So just kind of keep that in mind, that the context is shifting a little bit from maybe what you may have heard over the last few years. We'll talk more about that later on.
So when we think about some of the other things that colleges are looking for, it goes a little bit beyond as well, just the academic rigor. They're also looking at what kind of different activities have you done, the extracurricular. So this can be a lot of different things, not just the organizations, but what leadership roles did you have within these organizations. And I would even go as far as to say that it's better to have taken 2, 3, 4 organizations that you've been a part of, but you can show that you've taken leadership positions. Maybe you started off as a member and over the years you grew into like secretary, vice president, eventually becoming president. That shows a lot of leadership potential and it looks better on paper versus a student who has taken, or has joined about 10 different organizations and never really joined or took any leadership experience within these organizations. It shows that you just kind of put them on paper, but those that you've taken on those leadership roles shows that you're able to manage a group of people, you're able to lead a group of folks. And the universities, the colleges, they really love to be able to see that. What also counts as extracurricular activities, even things like volunteer service, community service, service learning, these are a lot of things that most people might think, oh, I just did it for the hours, I did it for the scholarships. I don't think schools care for that. In reality, believe it or not, they do. It looks great on paper, but it speaks a lot to your morals, your values, your ethics. These are the kind of things that schools are really paying attention to. So being able to do a lot of community service, it doesn't have to be, anything exaggerant. It doesn't have to be anything outlandish. No one's saying you have to do 5,000 hours, right? But being able to participate in any form of community service always looks great. And even thinking about outside of organizations, thinking outside of community service, things that are just unique talents or just things that you like to do. So even if it's worth say like we're part of the band, and so you have, let's say you're like the tuba player, those are things that really go far as well because it shows a talent that you were able to stick to. You've gone to practice, you put time and dedication into it. These are things that really kind of speak to your dedication, your commitment towards something. And when it comes to personal qualities, there's a lot of different things. This is not the end all be all, but resilience is one of the key things that colleges and universities are going to look for. So kind of going back to Dominique's earlier point about the rigor of the academic courses, resilience is a key factor to these courses. It shows that you're able to withstand the toughness of these courses. So what kind of resilience, what kind of grit are you able to kind of demonstrate in taking these tough schedules? Creativity is a real big part as well. And we've seen that, I feel, with a lot of universities, a lot of colleges. They like to see creativity I know some folks probably might have a misconception that the arts is not important and they don't really care for that, when in reality, it still looks really great. And I would always highlight that within your resume, within the, the essays that you're doing. This creativity is always strong. And probably one of the most under talked about things, but because it's so important, the sense of purpose that is derived from what you're doing. Colleges and universities don't just want to see a paper that you've done all these things and there's clearly no aim, no focus. You just did things for the sake of doing them. Why did you do it? What is your why? And you'll hear that a lot once you get to college. A lot of these leadership organizations will always kind of hone in on finding out your why. And I think that's important here in helping you understand what is your sense of purpose in everything that you've done. So all the extracurricular activities, the different kind of groups that you've been in, the community service, any talents that you've acquired and honed in on, what sense of purpose did that help you bring? How is that important to you and why is that important for you? And when you put all of these things together, it makes for a very strong application towards the colleges.
Awesome. I'm going to go back really quick, Heinz, if you don't mind. I just want to underscore something here because I also cannot emphasize this enough. When you do go to apply to college, just for some context here, there will be a section where you have, and we'll just use the Common App as an example. I've found this to be the most common platform that the students use, at least that I work with. You'll have 10 spaces to say, here are my activities. You don't necessarily need to fill all 10. You may have more than 10. That's totally fine either way. You'll have 10 spaces. You will have a very limited number of words, maybe a sentence, maybe two, to be able to explain what you did. And so you won't really be able to get into the nuts and bolts of what all of this looked like in just your activities list. And so where you're going to shine is not in that list so much at all. Really where you're going to shine is in the supplemental essay portion. And so this is kind of where extracurricular activities gets tied into personal qualities. It looks good for sure to have president, leader, all these different buzzwords on your activities list. Amazing. That's not enough, right? And that's kind of what we were just saying. Really where you're going to shine is when you have specific anecdotes, stories, moments that you can refer back to from your experiences that talk about how maybe you learned something about yourself, how you impacted your community. And that's going to be the key here. And so think less about how many times can I write president on that list and really think more about, well, how many, experiences, how many different, just moments have I had that I can really speak to concretely that have changed my thinking and made me the person that I am. That's really the value, more so than just those titles. And so I just, really want to underscore that. I think a lot of students put a lot of stake in those really formal leadership roles and X number of hours of community service. If you can't speak to why that was important to you and what you learned from it, it really wasn't, going to be all that you hoped it would be. So sorry to ramble about that. I think that is, if you walk away with anything from this whole presentation, that I think is one of the super key points. Next slide, just to go back a little bit as far as boosting your academic profile, it absolutely is one of the most critical factors in college admissions, especially if you are going towards some of the more elite schools with very low acceptance rates, super selective schools. You have to at least meet some sort of minimum threshold that shows, hey, I can hang at this school. I can, I'll be able to handle this level of rigor and coursework, et cetera. And so again, I already mentioned this, as much as you can both challenge yourself and achieve success in your classes, do so. This doesn't mean that you have to take every single AP on the list. You, of course, can be strategic about that and pick ones that are interesting to you and that, fit your profile and the type of major that you're potentially targeting, et cetera. But you should, at least if you are going to make the case that, hey, I'm interested in pre-med, you should probably have taken at least a couple of AP science or math classes to really say, really hone in on the fact that you're taking that STEM pathway. And so definitely just make sure that is a focus for you. Don't focus on being perfect in easier classes, really focus on how many times can I challenge myself and push myself forward.
And so going to that point with Dominic, which is saying really being strategic in selecting the different kind of courses that you're going for. So you really want to kind of focus in first and foremost on your core subject. So I would always recommend you want to prioritize the core subjects like English, mathematics, science. Social studies is also very important. This is really important when we think about like what kind of AP courses to take, what kind of IB courses, or even ACE credits as well. Focus in on those specifically. Those are going to really come in handy for you, not just for general education requirements, but those are the ones that really come out looking strong in your profile. So, talking about those AP, enroll in that if you're able to. AP, IB, ACE, those are really strong. I would even go so far as to say if you have the opportunity to do things like dual enrollment, also looks really great because you're able to handle college level courses while you're in high school. So it's kind of almost the same thing as AP, where you're able to take college level material while you're in high school. So that looks great. And so with electives, you want to be able to really kind of hone in on what kind of courses are going to really reflect on not just your interests, but that potential college major that you're going to be choosing. It looks really great if you are say, going for a computer science major and you end up taking a lot of programming courses, Python, JavaScript, etc. Those kind of things look great, right? If you're a computer science major or thinking about becoming a computer science and you take courses like music, that's great and that's not a bad thing, but that's not necessarily going to boost your profile if you're looking to get into a school like, say, MIT and you want to become computer science. Music AP probably wasn't going to help you as much as, say, intro to programming. That's going to help you a little bit better. So we want to be kind of strategic in the kind of electives that you're choosing. With all of that being said, probably the most important thing we can tell you, I think one of the other tidbits you want to walk away from after this presentation is understanding how to really balance yourself and making sure that you're not going to kind of throw yourself into burnout, don't overload yourself. You have to be able to find that balance between what's going to be super manageable, but what's also going to be super challenging, what's going to help boost your resume when you're submitting that application. So I've met several students in the past that they went out of the way to make sure they took every single AP course, and they'll take every kind of organization that they can find. They would volunteer as much as possible. And they were just struggling at the end of their first year, freshman year. So you want to make sure that you're not doing that to yourself. This is a bit of a marathon. You're going to have to pace yourself. You're going to be doing this for 4 years. You burn yourself out first year, I promise you it's not going to get any better for you at that point. So the better you pace yourself, you find that balance between challenging and manageable and what's interesting, things are going to look a lot greater for you. So just don't overdo it.
Awesome. And then to kind of build off of the second piece here, of course, again, we have the academics and then we have the whole outside of the classroom piece. Again, just to underscore, right? Don't overdo this either. Don't feel like you have to join every single club just to say that you were in every single club. That really will shine through in your application. And you absolutely, if you are a younger student, please hear this now. I have seen students get to 12th grade and honestly, sometimes super impressive students that have near perfect SAT scores, near perfect GPAs, this incredible list, of courses they've taken, an incredible list of all these extracurriculars. And then it comes time to write the essays and they're almost looking to me saying, okay, well, what should I write? What do I say? Right. And of course, like as quad counselors, we're here to help you. We're here to edit those essays, help you brainstorm, do all of that. But, if you don't have an idea of, okay, here is a time that I've really struggled, or here's a time that I've learned something about myself, to really answer those questions that are going to be asked of you in your supplemental essays, then, what truly was it all for? Right. And so at the end of the day, I would say, a pro tip from me is in 9th grade and 10th grade, start looking at, maybe you have a dream school or two that maybe you haven't looked into too much. For me, growing up, I always wanted to go to Harvard. I grew up in New England. Harvard is Harvard. Right. And I wish I had kind of looked at the supplemental essays, right? Some of them can ask you to be really creative. Some of them are pretty standard and you'll see them over and over and over again, right? So if you have a school or two that, is like, wow, I'd love to go to this school, Google their supplemental essays for this year. What are they asking students to write about? And ask yourself, well, do I have an answer to this question? And if I don't, how can I get it? And so that is really the ticket, having a really compelling answer to the questions they're asking you about your experiences, more so than just piling on as much as you can to have this long list of achievements. And so again, same theme, that really is what I would say is really the crux of this planning ahead, kind of let's start to think ahead for this process piece.
And I'm just going to quickly pop in. Awesome. Sorry, can't even see myself, but okay. Everyone can see me still? Fantastic. So just wanted to quickly take a moment to see if there's any questions in the chat and see if there's any questions that we can answer thus far. And I'd love to just tag on to something Dominique just said. We actually have a tool on our website that goes through some of the prompts that these schools are actually giving out. So we have the most recent list, and we'd highly recommend you just quadeducationgroup.com, and we have a blog. And in that blog, you'll be able to see these prompts if you want to review, so you can start asking yourself those important questions. In the meantime, I don't actually see any questions thus far, so I will pass it back to both of you.
Awesome. So in looking at what can we kind of look at as an example of a strong extracurricular, again, I know we kind of talked about this a little bit earlier, but just kind of touching up on it, leadership roles is always a strong example. So whether you were a president or secretary, vice president, etc., of your specific organization, if you're on an athletic team, so like maybe you are the captain of your if you're like the quarterback, you're the captain of your team. If you play soccer, are you the captain? These kind of leadership positions, the position itself isn't what's important. It's that you had that position, that you showed that leadership initiative, and that you had a pivotal presence within that team. So I think that's what really kind of stands out more than anything else. I wouldn't get so hung up like, oh man, I joined this club and I was only the secretary. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. That role still helped you learn a lot of vital skills and skill sets and whatnot. So what more can you tell us a little bit about that? When we look at regular community service, there's I think any kind of why am I blanking? Community service is looking great. Whether it was just kind of regular volunteering service, if you did any kind of like service learning projects that you may have done with your community, with like the church that maybe you go to and belong to, or maybe you did it as part of like a student organization, these things also look really great. Service learning projects are always really kind of like, they stand out. If you're within like the arts and performances, I talked a little bit about that earlier. So if you participate in theater, music, visual arts, these are also really strong activities. Again, don't let folks tell you that the arts is not impressive or it doesn't mean much. It absolutely does. It really speaks to your dedication and commitment, because it takes a lot of time and practice to be a part of these things. So be able to talk about that. How much practice did you put in? What was that like a 5-day thing, 6 day a week, 7 days? How did that look like? And why is that important for you? What skill sets did you learn outside of learning that particular musical or theatrical skill set? And what's also super great, I feel this doesn't get enough attention, is the academic competition. So like if you do like science fairs, debate teams, mathematic competitions, these are all wonderful examples of some of the competitions that really kind of hone in and make the extracurricular section a little bit stronger. I think particularly for me, debate was always one that I was super interested in when I was in high school. It helped me to become more of a critical thinker, not to mention it shows a strong vocabulary, which always is great for like the SATs. But these are, kind of just a few examples. Again, this is not an exhaustive list. There's so many more examples, but to help you kind of think of what can I use and what can I kind of put together on my supplemental essay to make mine a little bit stronger than everyone else around me.
Jumping off of that, so this is certainly related to kind of blending both your academic involvements and your extracurriculars, this kind of cohesive narrative as to who am I and what do I want to do next. And that will be required of you regardless of where you apply. That is, what we tend to call the personal narrative. And so if you apply through the Common App, you'll have one longer kind of personal statement, personal narrative, whatever you want to call it. And that will be basically you being able to tell your story. And there's a bunch of different topics that they come out with every year. And there's always a topic that just says like, write about whatever you want. And so you truly can write about whatever you want. What I would say is, whatever topic you choose, they all will boil down to this one piece that really just kind of gets at, who are you and why should you stand out amongst the other applicants that we have in the pool. And so a couple really key things here to think about. One is this is super related to sort of what we've been talking about as far as having a sense of purpose. And so this is, again, where you having this mindset of, I really care about this cause, or I really care about this academic topic, and whatever it is, really being able to give examples of how you've progressed over time and the things that have inspired you to dive deeper into biology and cell biology or whatever it is, or the things that have really made you realize that education inequality is a problem and how you want to help with that and how you got involved with tutoring, whatever it is, right? And so whatever your story is for, here's what I care about and why, and here's what I'm going to do with it, that is a big piece of your personal brand. Another big piece of that is not being afraid to let those other parts of your personality that are not sort of naturally showcased on the application. So it's not a formal activity that you've done that you're going to put in that activities list. It's obviously not your GPA, your class rank, anything like that. This is just little pieces of trivia about you. What do you love to do outside of school? Maybe you are looking to be pre-med and go down that path, and you've done the volunteering and the shadowing and you have all the STEM classes and all of that, but something you love to do on the side is dance, and you don't do it competitively. And it's just something you do for fun. Like, can you talk about that? Is that something that, adds a layer to your personality that wouldn't otherwise show up in your application? So I guess what I'm trying to say here is don't always necessarily think that everything has to be this big achievement. At the end of the day, colleges are reading so many applications and they're all blurring together, right? Okay, another student with great grades, great SATs, APs, right? What can you do to help differentiate yourself? And again, it doesn't have to be, and it can be, a really spectacular achievement that you've, gone ahead and created a nonprofit to raise money for something you care about or something like that. Those are great, right? We hear about those all the time. But don't also be afraid to let other parts of your personality shine through. You don't have to be this buttoned up robot, right? And that's something that I really struggled with when I was applying to college. I remember feeling so just almost like, okay, I have to be perfect and they have to think I'm super professional, and I could never talk about, my favorite movie or whatever it is, right? In my application. You can talk about whatever you want, right? And so if you can tie in your favorite movie with your passion in life and what you want to, move forward with in college or whatever it is, don't be afraid to make your essay lighthearted. Don't be afraid to, again, weave in those small pieces of your personality, little quirks about maybe your family or yourself or anything like that. That all will really help you at the end of the day.
So this has always been one of my favorite things to talk about. One of the things I didn't mention in my intro, outside of working for admissions, I've also previously worked in academic advising, and I love talking to students about exploring the potential majors and careers. There's a lot of different ways to go about this. I know this tends to be also an area where a lot of students kind of get nervous because what if I change my mind later on? And I think one of the most important things I could say before we get into most of the information here is understanding major does not equal career. We can help you with a lot of different majors that will help you towards a lot of different careers. I work right now in admissions, but I got my bachelor's in criminology, right? Clearly, I'm not working in law enforcement or the criminology field, but those skill sets helped me reach towards where I'm at right now. So these are the kind of conversations that we can have, but that's neither here nor there. What's really going to help you kind of first hone in on what you're good at, what you like, is being able to take self-assessment exams. Now, you can do this by talking to your guidance counselors at your schools. They can help you identify some exams. So like something like SIGI 3 or CUTR exams, you might be able to find those with your counselor. Maybe some institutions might offer you some free trials of that. These kind of exams are going to help you identify what are your strengths, what are your interests, what are the stuff that you're not interested in. Are you a tactile learner? Are you a visual learner? Auditory, it's going to help you kind of zone in on a little bit on these things. And that's going to really go a long way towards helping you figure out, well, what do I like? What don't I like? Because if you know that you are definitely more of a tactile learner, then probably you may want to choose a major that's going to be very hands-on versus something that's going to be very verbal or mostly writing. So that helps to kind of blend in on that. You All of that to say, you just basically want to make sure that you're looking into what different majors are, and you want to do your research. This can be a little bit difficult at first because you're not sure, you don't know what you don't know. So it's hard to start looking at research if you're not sure what to look for. But I think this is a great opportunity where whether you're talking to us or your high school counselors, they're going to help you kind of, and us as well, we're going to help you kind of funnel it down. What are your interests and how do we help you find that research? How do we help you start looking at what this looks like when we get into the colleges and universities that you're looking for? A great way to really help whether or not some of these majors or fields are for you, and you might have heard this already in nauseum, but job shadowing, internships, etc. These are great opportunities because you're working within these realms, within the field, and you get to see firsthand, is this something that I like? Is this something that I can see myself doing day in and day out? I think what's also important to understand here, and I'll say this, maybe it's a little biasly, but when you're doing these shadowings and these internships and when you're trying to think about majors and careers, a lot of folks have the misconception that they have to come to this aha moment of I found my passion and that's it, that's the one and done, I'm good, I found it. That's not necessarily always the case. You don't need to have an aha moment. You don't need to be able to say that that's your passion. What I think is more important is this something that I enjoy doing and I can see myself doing day in and day out? It might be an 8 to 5, 9 to 5 kind of job. It might be a little bit different than that, but are you going to enjoy it? Best way to find out, do some job shadowing. Go to some of these companies, see if they're offering any internship opportunities. Shadow somebody, see what it's like. That's going to give you some great insight. I mean, I cannot stress enough how much I wish I would have done that in high school. It would have helped me so much. And I think probably one of the other important things is remember that flexibility is key when we're doing this process. Your major, as it says here, can be very broad. As I mentioned, I was a criminology major and I am working within the field of higher education. I have 2 different masters in 2 different fields, but both of those categories are helping me into and shaping me into the professional that I am today. So keep in mind that a lot of careers don't necessarily require that one and only degree. A lot of folks think that, for example, if you want to get a degree in psychology, the only thing you can do is therapy or become a psychologist. When in reality, there are so many things that can help you find within, just getting a degree in psychology. Also, communications. There are, in all fairness, there will be maybe a few careers here and there where you do need a specific degree, such as like engineering or nursing. Those will require more specific degrees. But again, the number of those are a little bit smaller than those that you can get a major in almost anything and still get a degree, get a career in that field. So don't kind of pigeonhole yourself into like one item. Be flexible, be willing to explore everything, see what the classes are like, understand what kind of different careers you can get out of those majors. And you might surprise yourself. You might find a lot of different majors that you're interested in.
All right, we're going to pivot a little bit now to talking about building relationships. in general, but more specifically with your teachers, I would kind of broaden this a little bit to mentors, coaches, any adult in your life that's kind of helping you through your high school experience. One, just building relationships with teachers can help you because they'll support you better, right? And you can get that help that you need or whatever it may be. But of course, very kind of concretely, you need these relationships so you can get as strong of letters of recommendation as possible. Letters of recommendation are a very large part of the college application process. And so you absolutely don't want to be in the position, again, let's think ahead, as opposed to putting yourself in this position where you're scrambling as a 12th grader. Think ahead, and you don't want to be in that position where, you're in 12th grade and you're like, well, I never really actually got the chance to get to know any of my teachers, and I never went above and beyond, and, they don't know me that well. You absolutely don't want to be in a position where your teachers can only speak to how you did in the class, because how you did in the class is already showing up on your transcript. So really, you need to think about, what can I do to have this teacher be able to say something about me that isn't already showing up in my application? So again, this is a great way to build that character piece, show them, your personal qualities. Are you a hard worker? Do you always ask for help? Do you always help others potentially in the class that may need help from you? This is a great way to build that case for yourself, and just, being a good person, which actually goes a really long way in college admissions. And so that's definitely something that you want to keep in mind. Couple things. Again, you can never start too early on this. Some really strong letters of recommendation come from teachers that you maybe happen to have twice. And so if you have them in 9th grade and then in 11th grade, amazing. Maybe you have them in 10th grade and then they're your coach for something the year after. And so you never know how your involvement with this teacher is going to evolve. And so, you don't have to have an incredible relationship with every single teacher, but really do make the extra effort to stay after and chat with them and ask for help and be helpful. Ask them if they need help with anything, and just, ask them about their career or where they went to college, or just show a genuine interest in them. And that will go a super long way for you later on. For the sake of time, I'm going to just move on from this. But I think this one's relatively straightforward.
Yeah. I know we've kind of talked about this, but there's a lot of value in community involvement. So different ways that you're able to get involved within the community is being able to volunteer regularly with your local organizations. I mentioned earlier, like for those of you who are members of a particular church, it's also a great way to be able to volunteer. Maybe you want to volunteer with local organizations like Boys and Girls Club, YMCA, any other kind of cause that you really care about. Those are great ways to be able to kind of get involved with them. If you're able to start a particular project with them, so maybe you are renovating a particular building, you're renovating sheds, roads, houses, etc. These are great projects that address, of course, that very specific need within the community. Also speaks very highly when you talk about that within your essay. So if you're able to be a part of that, always looks great. And try to go for these involvement opportunities that really align with your goals. Don't just kind of choose anything for the sake of saying I did something. If you can't really speak about why that was important to you, why it was important to be a part of it, then you're not doing much to kind of benefit yourself. So if you're able to kind of link that sort of work to your academic or that career interests, your ethics, your morals and values, I think that really speaks highly. If you're able to show that commitment that you've had within that organization, the community involvement over time, colleges tend to really love to see that, because they want to see that you've been involved, you've been in it from day one. You're not looking to just start a project and then kind of dip it at the first sight, right? If you're able to stay with it for a while, it looks super great.
Amazing. Great. So we're back here. I promised we'd talk more about standardized testing. And so SAT, ACT, standardized tests, right? Those are the two kind of main and most common tests. One thing I'll say about them, there's almost never a preference as to which test you take. It really is a matter of preference. And so, in the same vein as just talking about starting early, start as soon as you can, trying to take diagnostic tests. for these two. I usually recommend it to start a little bit early, maybe the summer after ninth grade. Take an SAT, take an ACT. You may not score very highly because perhaps you haven't taken even enough math courses to cover all the content that you'll see or anything like that. But it will just give you a jumping off point for, okay, this test felt way better. I ran out of time on this test. I hated the science section on the ACT. I'm not going to go into too many specifics about the difference between the two. We have whole webinars on those, and please look those up. I think those are super informative and awesome. But they are very, very different tests, and some will be better fits for some students over the other. And so, important to choose the one that suits you. Again, starting end of freshman year, early sophomore year is definitely the best time, just so you have as much time as possible, both to come up with a study plan, whether that's, just gathering resources and studying on your own, potentially working with a private tutor, something like that. And then, just make sure you build in enough time as well to take the test multiple times. You may need to sit for it 2-3 times to get a score that you're super happy with. A question I get a lot is, well, how many times should I take it? Should I take it? I got this score and I've taken it 4 times. Should I take it again? At some point there will be a point of diminishing returns where you are stressing out so much over this test. You've already taken it so many times. Perhaps it's pulling you away from your extracurriculars or from your coursework. And so there definitely is, and you can work with us, you can work with a counselor, just talk to someone about this. There may come a point where you want to make that strategic decision to say, you know what, this score is good enough. I really need to focus on this extracurricular I'm really passionate about, or I'm not doing so well in my AP bio class because I've been studying for the SAT nonstop, right? And so definitely, this whole thing is a balance. It's a holistic process. So don't feel like if you can't achieve a certain score, you're absolutely doomed to never get into any of the schools you want to go to. It's all about balancing your priorities and doing the best you can in a reasonable amount of time with a reasonable number of test attempts, and then also keeping all of your other components on track.
What you also want to do is, along with all of this, making sure that you are also maximizing your time when it comes to the summers. Summer, I think, is always a great time to be able to relax and recoup, but you want to make sure that you're also doing things that can help benefit your profile. So this can kind of look differently for a lot of different folks, depending on your particular situation and your particular interests. One such way of being able to kind of maximize your time during the summer is being able to participate in certain academic camps. So doing things like math camps, science camps, like I know NASA does like certain little camps every year in the summer. I think those are great opportunities that look really nice. So being able to do that, I think, is always going to kind of boost that profile. We talked earlier about internships, and I think, again, probably one of the best things you could do if you're deciding whether or not this is going to be the right field for you, but also that kind of real life experience is also really benefiting your profile. So again, it's not just the academic component, but those other aspects, the extracurriculars that we talked about, that work experience is going to be super invaluable. Along with the internships, we talked a lot about volunteering work. That's also going to help to kind of deepen that community involvement. Schools really, really like to see whether or not you are engaged and involved within your community. So the kind of volunteer work can be very beneficial for you. And being able to kind of do that over the summer helps you out, because now you don't have to necessarily burn yourself out with, you're in school for about 8 hours, 9 hours a day, and then you got to go and work someplace else to do your community service hours. Over the summer, at least, you have kind of the whole day to be able to spread that out, make it a little bit more manageable, and again, avoid that burnout that we talked about earlier.
Awesome. One quick thing, I'm going to jump back really quick. One thing that I want to highlight here that I see so many times over and over again is I think students tend to obsess over like prestigious programs in the summer, and they want to go, to the like best Ivy League program they can get into so they can have the Yale name stamped on their transcript. Oftentimes that is not as helpful as you think it is. And so I wouldn't obsess so much over that as the experience you're gaining. And so I usually will, sometimes there are great programs. I'm like truly not to knock Yale or whomever else, these elite colleges, they put out awesome programming. Sometimes you can go and you can live on campus and you can take courses, and it's really, an amazing experience for so many different reasons. And I'm not saying not to do it. But don't think just because you do that, that is what is going to be impressive to colleges. In a similar vein to what we've been talking about, it isn't that I went to the Yale summer pre-college program and wow, look at this, impressive title of this class I took. It's okay, I took this, really specific cancer biology class, and it made me realize I want to be an oncologist. And here's, the intricacies of what I learned about. That is what is going to be more important. And so if you're truly interested in the courses that you're taking, if you do want to explore, again, I'm picking on Yale or whatever other school, please do it. But don't think so much about like, oh, I just have to have this prestigious thing on my resume. And again, really frame that in the context of what do I want to explore? Usually summer one, I encourage students to explore and do something more general like that. Go to the pre-med summer program where you'll learn from doctors and you'll have a series of lectures. And there's so many programs like that. Year 2, year 3, you should be hopefully kind of figuring out what you like and then moving more towards a more active as opposed to passive experience where you are doing work, you are doing an internship, you are doing research, you are actively volunteering, you are a camp counselor, like whatever work that is. And so that is how I would encourage you to think about your summers as you progress through high school, as opposed to let me get these like big name colleges on my transcript, because at the end of the day, most of the time that does not go as far as coming out with a tangible product or experience that, again, you can speak to in your essays. And I'm pretty sure that's the topic of the next slide. Or no, it's not. We're here. Sorry. It's the next slide.
Yeah. So I know we kind of touched up on this quite a bit, but being able to manage your time becomes super crucial when you're kind of getting ready for college prep. So this is really important in high school because you have to kind of juggle a lot of different things between your academics, what kind of extracurricular activities you're doing, any kind of personal things that you're doing, service learning, volunteering, things of that nature. So you have to find ways of what's going to be better for you and how do you organize it. Organization is going to look different for everyone. What might work for you may not work for someone else. And I think that's important to recognize. So some of you might be like me, where a planner may not necessarily be the greatest thing, but using the calendar, like Google Calendar or whatnot, that might be a little bit of a better tool. So find the organizational tools that work best for you. And I promise you, you can also find hundreds of apps on the App Store that's going to help you with that. I promise you, they're free and they're worth it. Being able to learn also how to prioritize different activities, different tasks is going to be super crucial, especially once you get to college. And make sure whenever you are looking at certain things and you're setting these goals for you to succeed or to fulfill in certain time limits, make sure that you're setting yourself realistic goals. Don't do anything that is, don't necessarily shoot so high that when you don't hit it, oh my God, like how could I not? If you're shooting way too high right at the very beginning and you're not giving yourself a reasonable amount of time to get there, you're only kind of downplay the successes that you have had. So make sure that they're realistic. I always like to use the example, like for me, I'm always like on the health journey of like, how do I become more health conscious and how do I eat food that's more nourishing? So if I am in a process of I want to lose like, X amount of pounds so I can be healthy for my height and my weight. I don't want to say, all right, well, in 2 months, I'm going to lose 70 pounds. That's unrealistic. That's unhealthy. I have to set more realistic goals. Like, all right, well, I'm going to try to work on 1-2 pounds per week so I can focus on maybe what is that, 2, 4, 6, 8 per month, whatever the case may be. It's something realistic. It's reasonable. It's attainable. All right. Think of that SMART acronym that you may have heard quite a bit. And so with all of this kind of tying back into the main theme, learn to manage that time effectively as best as you can. Because when I tell you college is a game of how do I manage my time, because you're going to have way too many things to do and you're going to feel like you don't have enough time. So now's the time to start learning how do I prioritize and how do I put this all together.
Amazing. I'm going to gloss right over this because I think, like I said this at the beginning, if you walk away thinking one thing, it's that you need to have something to say in your essays. I'm going to leave it at that. Important to start early, important to draft over and over and over again. This is really how you're going to shine in the application and show truly who you are, from a more holistic perspective, as opposed to what's just shown in your grades and your test scores and your activities list. I'm going to leave it at that. If again, like, just don't forget this, but I don't want to go too deep into it. Again, for the sake of time.
Navigating financial aid is super important. I know this might be a bit of a rough spot for most folks. FAFSA used to be a really confusing thing. FAFSA has become much simpler to understand nowadays, so I think this makes it a little bit better. But you want to definitely explore a lot of different scholarship opportunities. We always like to recommend searching for merit-based scholarships and need-based scholarships early on. The earlier, the better, because they tend to go faster than most others. And don't be afraid to look outside of just your local area. Go for statewide, national-wide scholarships, school-specific scholarships. Apply for anything and everything you can find. I always like to tell people, if it's for free, it's for me. So might as well take advantage of that. So make sure that you're completing the FAFSA. That is free application for federal student aid. Do it early, because the later that you do it means less money that you are more likely to get. The earlier you do it, you are open to get a lot more money depending on Pell Grants and scholarship opportunities. So make sure that you do so early as possible. Make sure that you are also talking with your school's financial aid office so they can help you understand, and make sure that they're reviewing things, help you kind of maximize accuracy and whatnot. So again, look for those federal, state, and institutional grants. If you're able to find work-study programs, absolutely, I highly encourage those. Not only is that good on the resume in terms of experience, but it's additional money. Again, if it's for free, it's for me. Let's take advantage of the money.
All right, awesome. This is a huge one for me. I'm going to struggle to keep this brief, but I will. Visit schools. I think Heinz said this about something else earlier, and I love to say this. You don't know what you don't know in this process. I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know what type of school would be a good fit for me. You don't know what you're even looking for until you've experienced a few college tours, until you've gone to campus, you've talked to students, and you can see, oh, well, this is something they offer at this school, but all the other schools I toured don't offer that thing. That must actually be unique. And if it's something you want, then great, search for that in your other schools. And so always recommend that you visit schools, not only just going on the formal tours, but again, potentially meeting with professors or students or anyone who's able to talk to you about their experience. The more kind of, holistic view you can get of a school, the better. There's no wrong time to do this. If you can go during a regular term on a regular weekday, which, believe it or not, is going to coincide with your high school, of course. But if you can potentially get out of school for a day or whatever it may be to really see what that campus looks like on a normal day, the better. I'm going to leave it at that, again, for the sake of time, but we do whole webinars about visiting colleges and all of that. And so if that's something you're interested in, definitely look those up. Ton of good information there too.
So a lot of next steps, I will try to keep this as brief as possible as well for the sake of time. But with the things that you should be all working on right now is making sure that you are setting your academic goals. And again, this may look different for everyone, so don't think that your goals have to be the same as everyone else around you. Always aim for the highest that you can, including grades and the rigor of your academic courses. Get involved as much as you are able to manageably and without burning yourself out. Make sure that you are exploring different kinds of careers. See what you like, what you don't like. That's going to help you out. Make sure that you are planning effectively for your standardized tests, whether you are doing the SAT or the ACT. And make sure, most importantly, that you are seeking guidance when you need it. One thing I learned in college is if you need help, raise your hand. Raise your hand as often as possible. So whether it's from your counselor or even our team or anyone else that you trust that's gone through this process, make sure you're seeking that guidance, because you never know, just maybe whatever question you have, someone's going to have the answer for it. So you might as well ask.
And this is when I pop back in. I know we're over the hour, so I appreciate you both still being here, and I appreciate our audience as well. We have some questions in the chat. A few of them the majority of them are quite detailed. As much as we would love to sit one-on-one with every single one of you on this webinar, we can't, which is why we encourage you to book that free consultation where we really get to deep dive into your story and kind of go through all those specific questions that pertain to you and your experiences. So I apologize, but we won't be able to get to those tonight. However, there's a question in here about the one piece of advice, and again, I want to try and keep this as brief as possible, but the one piece of advice each of you have to students and parents who are about to step into this process. Whether they're a first year, whether they're a sophomore, just that one piece of advice that they should keep with them.
Yeah, for sure. So for me, it's again planning backwards from those essays. And so the more you can familiarize yourself with the types of questions that might be asked of you in both writing supplements and that bigger kind of narrative essay, the better. And then similarly, if you can keep almost a log throughout high school of all of the different experiences and moments that you have where you could potentially, plug into those different essays, the better. And so I encourage students not only to keep a list of their awards and their test scores and all of these different things that they achieve during high school, but also, almost like a journal, right? If you have a really bad day and you feel like you really messed something up, maybe write that down in your list, if it's a spreadsheet, whatever it is. And you might want to call back on that moment if you're asked about a time that you failed or a time that you struggled or something like that. And so I like to work with students on kind of thinking through all these different, anecdotes during the application process. But if you can come up with, a set of criteria that you see in the different supplements that you can kind of write out for yourself, and then you can put those little anecdotes in those buckets as they come up, the better it's going to be. Because 4 years is a long time. And by the time you're 17, 18, applying to college, and you're trying to think back to when you were 14, 15 as a freshman, you might not remember some of those really key experiences that would be really awesome anecdotes and just stories to tell.
It's really hard to follow up after that. But if there is one key piece of advice I can give to students and families, I know I mentioned it earlier, but I'll reiterate it because I really think it's important. Be flexible in your exploration when you are thinking about different majors or career fields. You never know how things are going to go. So like a lot of us kind of get dead set on this one particular major, this one particular field, and we kind of put blinders on. So we're only focusing on that one thing. So, be flexible and being able to explore different options. You'll never believe just how open you might be to these other options, which will open up a lot more opportunities for internships and courses and majors. And it makes this entire process a lot more bearable. So the more flexible and open-minded you are in this process, I think the better opportunities and the better experiences you're going to end up having.
Fantastic. We appreciate both of you and your wonderful insights. Looking at the time, I think that's all the time that we have for tonight. So thank you, Heinz. Thank you, Dominique, for being here. Thank you to our wonderful audience. Again, if you have any kind of questions, comments, concerns, you want to chat with one of our counselors, definitely book that one-on-one free consultation where you will be able to get to do that. With that being said, that's all the time we have, and I hope everyone has a wonderful evening, and we'll see you on the next webinar.